Hello everyone, welcome to CollectAWrestlePalooza. We have another VHS video today. We're already breaking the rules. I'm here with Josh Waxpac-Man. Our first rule was going to be that we were going to do part 2 in a month, but here we are in a week. So my feeling is this was so much fun, it was so exciting that we just couldn't wait to record another video. How are you doing today, Josh?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me again, Tom. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So I want to start talking about VHS. This is what the project is about. I have a lot of thoughts about what I've discovered this week. I've purchased my first 3 videos, actually 4 videos, but we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. And I opened the first 2 today, and I waited to open them because I wanted to get excited right before recording this video, and it worked. I opened up my first 2 videos. They're amazing. They're immaculate. I love them, and I can't wait to buy some more. How's your week been, Josh?
It's been great. I've been on a similar ride. I didn't wait till Christmas like you to open them. I opened them right away. I posted a little bit of teaser pics on my personal media pages, but yeah, it's been a fun ride, and I really like getting into this VHS stuff. It's kind of I don't know. It's really fun for me. That's the most important part. It's different and it's unique, and it's a whole new gamut of things to learn, and that's exciting to me. I always like learning in different niches, whether it's figures or VHS or whatever the case may be. So
cool. And just to bring the viewers up to speed who may not have seen part 1, Josh and I are lifelong wrestling enthusiasts, and we both started getting back into the hobby more seriously pretty recently, and we both saw VHS as an undiscovered avenue, at least for us. There may be people out there that have been doing VHS for a lot longer than we have. I'm sure there are, but we thought to document our journey into this new category of wrestling was a good idea for a few reasons, but primarily to learn alongside you guys. We don't know much about it, and every week we're learning and discovering new things. So this is a series of audio podcasts just documenting our journey into VHS, and specifically Wrestling VHS. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my thoughts from this week. And I've been thinking a lot about who I am as a collector. And I like to collect value. I like to feel like I got a good deal. I like to feel like I discovered something that I can afford, and this is a precious object in my collection. Finding value in VHS was something that I was very concerned with this week. And my primary thought, this led me down a little bit of a rabbit hole. First of all, talking about watermarks. I think that sealed VHS is the way to go. That's what I'm targeting right now. Let a little bit of the cat out of the bag. That's what I'm targeting. When they were released, they were not collectible. Wrestling cards, even wrestling action figures, at least modern wrestling action figures, as they get released, there are always going to be people that swipe them up, keep them sealed, keep them in pristine condition, and that is going to drive the rarity of the objects, at least in good condition, down, because you're always going to have a subset of people that are buying them, and that's the type of collector that they are. VHS, I feel like, particularly in the 80s and maybe even the early 90s, when these objects were put out, no one was thinking about that. So finding a good sealed VHS has been my treasure hunt. That led me down the rabbit hole of the authenticity of watermarks, because I became obsessed with looking at the pictures on the auctions and saying, is this an original seal? And what I learned is that watermarks are somewhat of the Wild West. There were some objects that were sealed that did not have a watermark but looked completely authentic. In fact, to give one example, the Coliseum videos, the WWF Coliseum videos, they have rulers, they have keychains, they have these pack-ins, I think during the early 90s. But some of them don't have watermarks. And I still don't know the answer if those are authentic. They must be authentic because they have the pack-in. I doubt anyone would take the time to repack a Coliseum ruler on the back of a video if you're going to sell it for $20. And that actually is something that I think about, and I like entry points on inexpensive objects if they're $20, $30, because that ultimately rules out people that are doing it nefariously, people that are resealing. Why would you take the time to reseal something for $20? So that was one rabbit hole that I went down and started to develop a little bit of expertise in. What have you found, Josh, over your week?
I mean, I researched more about the beta versions, but I haven't really gotten very far. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag with something that I bought, but one of the reasons I bought one of the VHSs is to learn more about. I keep seeing these beta ones in the early '90s. Are you seeing that too?
I don't even beta meaning versus VHS.
Well, it's a VHS, but it says beta version on it. So Eric told me about that Dirk Diggler, and this isn't really from a research perspective. I guess I learned more about myself when I went into this VHS thing. Just that, I kind of went 900 miles an hour, and I wasn't as slow and methodical, and I was kind of buying things based on other people's influences, and I had to reel myself back in some ways to just like kind of slow down and find that value and get back to what made this fun in the first place too. So, and I was kind of getting away with that with cards, and with VHS I feel so much more grounded and more present. It's kind of weird, but the beta thing is the biggest thing I'm researching. The sealed thing, I'm buying sealed ones that I thought were sealed from the factory that are sealed in someone's basement. I don't know if you're experiencing that too. The shrink wrap looks different.
Yeah, well, the other thing I found with the sealed is, and there are literally examples of this, previously viewed movies, gently viewed movies, you'll find that sometimes the seal might actually be a professional seal, but it might be from Blockbuster Video, or it might be from, Mom and Pop's Video on the corner, where they have a gently used copy, maybe one that only got rented once or twice, and they decided that they were going to reseal it and sell it as a previously viewed copy, maybe without a label on it.
Yeah, and just a full disclaimer too, we're as green as can be here. We're not saying we're like the cat's meow and we know all about this. Like, this is to be as transparent as they come. Like, we're learning as we go here. So it's I don't know, it's just there's so much to take in, and I haven't really found, and maybe somebody could reach out to us in the comments below, like the VHS wrestling Bible guy, like who's the one guy who has that David Peck type collection with VHS type stuff. I mean, I would love to pick his brain. You seem to went after this from a more methodical, great approach, like learn all the history. And I went in gangbusters trying to source everything under the sun.
I wouldn't have expected anything less from you.
Yeah, that's why the yin and the yang works so well with us, I think. But I found, I was trying to find out how the guys were sourcing these things. I gave you one tip, I think, or maybe I told Eric that. And I don't know if I should let that cat out of the bag either, but there are guys that just do VHS full time, and that's all they sell. And I was getting deals on wrestling because they're pretty much in it to sell the big time horror stuff for big money, the rare, unique stuff. They get all this stuff in a big grouping, and they just like a baseball card dealer who has a thin box of wrestling cards who doesn't really know as much about it or care as much. So I was finding some value there. But yeah, I was just trying to find value. I was trying to think different too. Like, I know Vince has everything probably backed up under the sun 9 ways to Sunday, right?
Right.
So like if anything ever went down with the WWE, they have archives in probably 4 different states. They have, probably the world's biggest, warehouse in Connecticut, with all these treasures in it.
Right.
Hopefully they're not all in one place, because God forbid a fire or anything else happens. My thought process was, I wanted value, and I want to get stuff that I got stuck with that I enjoyed. And half of these that I'm getting in, Tom, I want to rip open and watch. Like,
right. Oh, same thing. Same thing. And it's funny. I'm going to cut you off a little bit because I have a question for you. So, talking specific, something I did not buy, but something I saw. I was combing eBay. There was a warehouse box full of a late 90s, early 2000s. It was called No Holds Barred, a WWF release. And this warehouse box was 100 tapes for $50 or something like that. I said to myself, is this something, like you said, is this something from the Vince McMahon, overproduction that got released, and therefore this one title? I saw people selling individuals of it for $6-7 online, and I even flirted with the idea, maybe that's the direction I'll go. Maybe I'll buy this warehouse box and sell them for $2 each and double my money. And I ultimately didn't go down that route because I don't know anything about it, and that gave me trepidation. And if I don't know anything, usually I will not take that risk unless I have either some bravado and think I know more than I do, or I do have some insight into it. But I think there are particular titles like that out there, and I don't know which ones they are.
Yeah, well, I agree. I mean, I guess we're a little bit different in that. I see, like, if I can get 100 pieces of something for $2 a piece, I'm all over it all day long, because I know, like, I mean, especially if it's 20 years old, I'll take that risk.
So you're probably Googling or eBaying the no holds barred warehouse box right now, right?
Right now, I'm trying to be present with you, but
maybe it won't be available tomorrow.
Well, let me put it this way, Tom. Like, I see something vintage, whether it's cards, VHS, whatever, and there's a bunch of them, right? And not necessarily. Like, that might be the last 100 of that VHS that guy's been peeling off for 4 years.
Right.
Or, those might be the last 100 on there. Like, I hear all these stories about how there's boxes of this and that in Saudi Arabia, and they're still coming out. I'm like, who really knows?
Right.
I think these VHSs are a lot more scarce than we think. And now, like I said, I'm trying to buy the sealed one and one I can view because, I mean, I want to relive some of this stuff too. I mean, I think it would be cool to be sitting in, a cabin in upstate New York watching some classic ECW, stuff. And, that's a big part of my focus too, because I think I try to think differently. There's no probably ECW archives, right? There's probably none. I mean, maybe there is, and I'm close to Philadelphia, but it might take me 20 years to find out where that is, or who has that. So that's kind of my thought process too.
And one thing I've thought about is that these VHS copies, I think a lot of times they're not available anymore in that form. The VHS copy might have additional things that trademarks have made the WWE Network cut out, or I don't know that for a fact, but I feel like the format, the original format of these events is no longer available a lot of times.
You're absolutely right. Well, as far as bonus footage, like so I didn't buy this VHS, but I think we joked around about the Survivor Series logo, the 94 or 96, I forget which year. I'm having a brain fart moment, but I remember I went to go buy that VHS, and they said, hey, there's an exclusive dark match before the pay-per-view on this VHS that nobody's seen. And I was like, really? So back in the day, like, my dad dropped $40 on the pay-per-view. I watched Survivor Series, and only the people that were there got to watch that match. I'm like, that's nowhere else? Nowhere on the internet? I'm like, that seems bizarre to me. Is that right? I mean, I don't know.
Right.
I have no idea. I would love to, we always talk about print run with cards. Well, how many VHSs were run, I would love to be a fly on the wall and find somebody that really knew the ins and outs, like, maybe a guy that owned West Coast Video or one of these smaller, blockbuster type competitors, or even maybe still find a mom pop VHS place that's still alive in some, rural part of Maine or on the East Coast, that still rents VHSs. I have no idea, but that's probably a better chance of finding a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
Who knows? Some of these back roads I travel, I tell you what, man, you really get off the beaten path. I encourage everyone to turn off the major highways on their GPS when they're out hunting and take the back roads. My old boss used to tell me that, and I was like, oh, you're crazy. And I'm like, sure enough, he's right. Go down the roads nobody travels.
Right.
So.
Well, that's funny because, and I think you and I are very similar in the sense that we're always thinking about something. And actually, as I was driving the other day, I was thinking about VHS and rental businesses, and thinking to myself as a businessman as well, could a VHS rental work right now? You'd have to rent out the units too. I was thinking, well, and my mind went 2-3 steps down and said, okay, if someone's going to rent a VCR they have to be able to hook up to their TV, and modern TVs aren't going to take it. So maybe you rent out the all-in-one, TV VCR combos that you can just plug in with some rare vintage VHSs for the diehards. And my mind was going down all those avenues as well. And you're absolutely right. I think one of the things about VHS that is attractive to me outside of value and outside of all of these other things is the purity of the object and what that means, the nostalgia behind it. One thing we did talk about last week was that feeling of putting a big VHS into a VCR and hitting play is, knowing if you hit record, you might record over something. If you have the tape, if the tape gets stuck, it might, all of those feelings are there in something that's analog or something that's not coded in ones and zeros. And
sure.
And life today, as you've alluded to as well, I mean, we live in a one and zero binary life, and VHS is anything but. So
I mean, we're on such an on-demand society. We need it right away, right instantaneous. I mean, could you imagine, a 16-year-old kid had the patience to put in a VHS and hit play, and wow, it's amazing.
Right. So I have a question for you.
My mother too coming home and being like, "Oh, the VHS never recorded the wrestling match." I'd be like,
"Yeah, exactly." And you're never going to have another chance.
We just bought new tapes. What's going on here?
Yeah. Or my sister needed to record her program, and it was the only tape left, so she recorded over it.
The Nutcracker took over Hulkamania. It's like what happened?
And for me, it was Monday Night Raw. That was the one. Or not Monday Night Raw. That's the new Primetime Wrestling, they called it. Primetime Wrestling with Bobby Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon. And it was on, I believe, Saturday night at midnight or 1 a.m., way past my bedtime. So every week we would do the OTR, it was called On Time Recording, and we'd program it, and I would double and triple and quadruple check to make sure that VCR was going to record at the right time to get Primetime Wrestling.
One thing I thought about while I was just kind of doing my morning meditation and drinking my coffee one day is, I looked at some pictures I had in college, and I still had a TV in 2002, my freshman year in Northern Arizona, and it had a VHS in it. So it's not that long ago that's only 20 years ago that I was still watching VHS. I often think of it like a dinosaur technology, and I mean it is, but it wasn't really that long ago that we were watching these things. One of the cheap DVDs or VHS that I bought, I'll let this out because it's really no big thing. It was this Undertaker thing, sealed, and it was from 2002. And I was like, wow, there's people still buying this, 20 years ago, pretty actively.
So my question for you: have you bought any VHS yet that is not sealed?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I bought ones that were sealed and then cracked when they arrived, or they had a small crack and I couldn't even see in the picture. And I was a little bit disappointed. Sorry, my mailman just dropped off the package.
This was something that pulled me away from buying not sealed as well. I know at the beginning I said I was targeting sealed, and I have not bought any that are not sealed. And one of the reasons is, and maybe this goes back to my OCD and back to wanting to have these amazing objects, the condition of the tape, and I heard about tape mold, which I had no idea about.
I heard about that this week too. I didn't know about that either.
And I have no idea how prevalent that is. Is that something that happens over time regardless? Is that something based on being in a basement? Are these tapes going to eventually mold no matter what because they're made from something organic? And I had no way of judging the quality of that. I know some of the listings would say tested, and you wouldn't see it in the listing, but that just scared me too much from buying old, particularly because I'm targeting, and as you know, I'm looking for stuff from the 80s and early 90s. So a lot of that stuff, the old X rentals, the clamshell Coliseums, which I really want to buy, I've been hesitant to buy because I just have no way to evaluate the quality of the tape from a listing.
I will tell you this, though. I heard about that mold, and I was like, uh-oh. And that kind of changed my focus. I was like, okay, we live on the East Coast where, in the summer it's 100% humidity and, 90 degrees. And I was like, if those are in someone's basement or they've been in Miss McGillicuddy's attic for, 30 years, I was like, I'd much rather buy one in Arizona where it's from a dry climate and take my chances on that. So I started to look at the location of these tapes maybe I'm being a little OCD, but I mean, if we got to factor this in, who's to say the $55 tape I bought last week, even though it's sealed, is, it was in Hurricane Katrina? I mean, I don't really know.
Right.
So.
Well, I think that we're talking about some points here that are barriers of entry, and I think that they're probably reasons that maybe folks that have dabbled in VHS before stopped, because you can't judge the condition. Is the seal accurate? What watermarks? What videos should have watermarks? Which ones shouldn't? All of those things. I can see a hardcore collector not wanting to take the time to analyze or figure out those things in order to evaluate if their purchase is a good purchase from a monetary perspective.
Yeah, even though I feel like I'm shooting kind of somewhat in the dark, I feel somewhat confident about what I'm doing too.
Right.
And I think that's just, my time around the sun and, years in the saddle of doing this. But like the mold thing, I mean, I know there's like little intricacies about certain niches. Like, you wouldn't probably know that in the vintage clothing business, my full-time job, there's t-shirts from the 80s and 90s that have dry rot, and I could shred them in a minute. You got to be careful buying a wrestling t-shirt that has dry rot. You could buy a $300 Stone Cold shirt, and it could be dry rot. It's the way it's made. It's the way it's stored. There's a number of variables. So it goes back to the fact that, are you collecting VHS to hang it on your fireplace mantle? Are you collecting VHS to watch? Like, what's the grading company looking at for when they grade these things? I mean, I would love to. We should probably try to get one of those guys on and do an interview. Has anyone interviewed one of these VHS grading companies yet, and see what they look for? I mean, I have a DVD or one I want to send in, but maybe the reason I got it for a song is because this one corner is not going to fly. And I have no idea.
I recently discovered I believe the premier grading company, and I don't even remember what the name is. I want to say IGS right now. I don't know if that's accurate or not.
That's correct. Yeah, we'll share a link.
They only have, 20 followers on Twitter? I mean, very few. Maybe it's not 20, but it's very, very few. And it surprised me. And it really, clued into the stuff you're talking about, the infancy of this all.
Yeah, or this might just be a micro niche too,
Right.
I mean, 1,500 tags on Twitter or Instagram. I mean, maybe it's maybe it's a micro niche now, or maybe it's a powder keg waiting to go. Like, I mean, I showed you that golden auction with the Hogan. That was a DVD, and that went for significant money. Obviously, that was graded.
Right.
Obviously, it's Hogan. You really can't go wrong. Like, too, if you're doing this with us, you can let us take the lump so you don't have to. I would say that on my channel. Let me spend money so you don't have to. I'm enough bonehead. Let me go out and be like, okay, way to go, Couch. You dropped $200 on this, and you're an idiot. I mean, literally, like, let us take the lumps or learn with us, and you can't go wrong in certain arenas, like Taker, Rock, Hogan. I mean, the big three. I mean, Flair. You can go down the road. Like, I don't think you can go wrong with any of those guys. People are always going to want to see, matches from those guys.
Right.
In my opinion. But.
Right. All right, great. And as we're wrapping up here, I have one more question for you. This was just something that I had thought of. The pure collector, someone who would represent who I was as a kid, which is what I want to come back to ultimately. But, let's face it, we're adults. We have responsibilities. We want to also, potentially make money at this, or at least not lose money at this, because I think that the hobby can be very addictive. I think that a lot of people out there can maybe get in over their heads when they have the means to do so. If you're a kid and you spend your lunch money, who cares? But if you're an adult and you blow the money that is supposed to pay for your children's education or their clothing or their food or even your own house or apartment or whatever, that's a real problem. That's not healthy. So I think that as an adult, I see it as, if I can have a more of a business mind about it, even though it may not be my pure motivation, it will allow me to stay healthy, but also allow me to collect more stuff. If I can turn my inventory, even if I don't make a lot of money at it, if I can at least make enough so that if I buy something, I feel like I'm not going to lose my shirt on it. I can always turn it, or I have the means to turn it, And I think that the collector has changed a lot as well because of modern opportunities to platforms to sell. You know, when I was a kid, eBay didn't exist. Now, as I'm an adult and I'm thinking about it, I say to myself, are there collectors out there? Do you think there are collectors out there that are just buying what they love and literally just buying, you know, make it VHS? They literally want to collect VHS.
Sure. I don't know. I kind of look at the collector in today's world as like a hybrid. You know, everyone's kind of buying, investing, flipping. You know, there's no real, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I don't find a lot of pure diehard guys that just collect and don't sell. I mean, I feel like everyone sells. You know, everyone's looking for value. So I don't really know. I would love to see if there's guys that just solely collect VHS or Hasbro figures or cards, but you know, most of those purist guys don't like the guys that do resell things. So, but like we all kind of resell things in some fashion, or we're all, you know what I mean? Like I say,
Right.
I'm an investor. I'm not an investor. I'm just a guy who looks for value.
Right.
You know, I don't want to get burned. I want to turn $1 into 20 or $1 into 5 or, you know,
Right.
5 into 50. Like, so I don't know. That's like a real kind of blurred, you know, it's hard to tell who's purely collecting, who's purely business, you know, who's trying to pull the wool over your eyes. Like, it is a little bit of, I mean, that's just my own experience in the last couple of weeks, but
Right.
you
Well,
know me personally, and I'm dabbling in other arenas. So, I mean, I hope there's guys that otherwise it's not sustainable, right? If we don't have those pure guys, or at least
Right.
guys that are 75% pure, you know, I don't think we have anything at the end of the day, because then it dies out. You know, if everyone's in it for the quick buck and those guys all exit the party, well, then what's going to happen in the market? You know?
Well, let me tell you a little bit more about what I'm thinking and why this relates to VHS, because I see VHS as having potential to be more of a pure play in terms of that. When I started back into the hobby again as an adult a year ago, 2 years ago, whenever it was, I was buying LJNs. And that's all I bought. And I was literally buying LJNs for the absolute purest of reasons. Didn't have an eBay account. I'd never sold a collectible in my life. And I had the means to buy the objects that I could not afford as a child. So I bought, I don't even remember which my first one was, but I bought a George Steele and a Rowdy Piper, and I bought a Cowboy Bob Orton and a Jesse Ventura, and then it turned into a Big John Studd and an Iron Sheik, and you know, and then I started getting into it and learning that, you know, even in the LJNs, there are some that are more desirable. The ones with the black bodies, the one-man gang, and the, you know, $1 Million Man, and the ones that can get scuffed. And then I started looking at condition more, and it sort of turned into me evaluating it as an object just because I had more exposure to it, and that's where my mind went with it. So I'm starting to see that happening again in VHS. I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing, but you know, my target last week was I want to buy WrestleMania 1, 2, and 3. And then I said to myself, wait a second, I don't know if these are going to have mold. Wait a second, you know, these clamshells might not be in great condition. Wait a second, I don't know if it's and my mind is going there again. And again, I'm not saying that it's good or bad, but I see that happening in my thought process. So I'm just wondering what kind of collectors are out there, if there are people that are buying this VHS just for the reliving of their childhood, doing what you're doing, or talking about doing is maybe buying them even to watch them. I mean, what a pure reason to buy an object. So I would just be interested in what, you know, if anyone who's watching this has some thoughts about those sorts of things, or if you have thoughts about them, what people are thinking in terms of how that relates to VHS.
Yeah, I'd be very curious too. I mean, I'm more of a purist with this VHS category. Just like, you know, I've been kind of buying some Hasbro figs lately too, just as a pure passion project. Like the VHS, I don't see. These are things I want to own. If I have an uh-oh moment and need to sell these in a pinch, I don't think I could, like a Ric Flair dual autograph with Sting 1 of 5 card. You know, if I needed money tomorrow night. So, but when I say I'm selling or reselling things too, it's, you know, if I'm buying a grouping of 16 of them and I only want 4 of them, well, then I'm going to dump the other 10 on the internet, and then we're going to get branded as VHS resellers. But that's not, I'm just doing it to find what I want, and I don't know. So
Right. Right.
I'd be really curious to see if there's a guy just in his garage who has like 900 of them and they're all sealed and they look beautiful. I'm sure there is somebody out there.
Right, right. Well, wrapping up, I mean, I want to also tell viewers I have some big news for myself. I actually left my six-figure job this week, and it's put me in a state of contemplation because I feel like I might be going through somewhat of a midlife crisis. I feel like I might be going through just a real reevaluation of myself and my motivations as a person. So, you know, I have another job lined up that, you know, it's not as if I'm going at this blind, but part of what is happening is I'm getting into collecting and I'm getting into really thinking about how I can take this seriously. That's something I'm going through right now. This VHS project is part of it. Moving forward, it's just thinking outside the box and trying to think about how this hobby can fit into my life and be integrated in my life in a bigger way.
Well, that all sounds great. I mean, I think you'll do great in whatever the next chapter is, Tom. I mean, you know how I feel about you, and I think you're on to bigger and better things. So
Right.
I'm excited to see what the future holds for you.
Awesome. Well, good. Well, let's wrap up. I mean, any final thoughts here? Anything you want to convey to the viewers before we...
No, I mean, feel free to drop comments in Tom's YouTube. You know, tell us what we're doing wrong, or tell us what your thought process is. You know, what's in your collection? Have you even thought about this? Are we just two crazy guys on the East Coast? I mean, we'd love to hear any kind of feedback. That's what makes this go round. You know, if we don't have each other, at the end of the day, what do we have? You know, a bunch of VHSs and 3,000 pieces of cardboard. You know, in my apartment. I mean, that's my viewpoint. But
Right. Awesome. No, totally agree. All right, guys. Well, have a great week. Thank you for watching. Please, you know, if you do like this or do like what we're doing here in this collaboration, give us ideas, help us out. This is about having a lot of fun, but also providing some meaningful content for you, and hopefully you can join us along this adventure. So thanks again. Have a great week.